Oh, that's not a good spot.
That is not a good spot. Not at all. Ooh.
Hello,
Hello.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, bet. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Totally still in bed right now.
So am I. I'm actually moving just because of the the lighting. This is I look like a villain right now.
In your lair, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got I'm supposed to have it's sort of a job interview and I'm doing the classic I got a professional shirt on and then I've got sweatpants on under this.
No, it'd be like that. I just like wear my like crew neck, but like ready. Reckendorf gonna see all of this. This is in bed. My setup.
Honestly, it's nice to be able to do meetings from your bed,
Dude, it's comfortable and like I feel more, just ready.
Hey,
Hey.
I'm coming. Was it Ben that had to leave early?
Huh?
Was it Ben that had to leave early?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's only gonna be like 15 or 20 minutes before it ends anyways, so.
Yo, I got in such a routine of like sleeping in more than I already do, and having to get up at 9 was kind of hard. I'm gonna be honest. And I feel like that's so bad.
I don't know why it was 9:30.
Yeah, me neither. I was kind of like, dang.
Let me see. I know Ashley, she's at work, but she's about to join. Are we missing anybody else? Just Chester, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Well, maybe one of y'all want to start.
Uh,
Well, how did everybody like the book?
I liked it a lot. I thought it did a really good job of setting everything up and then kind of going piece by piece. I was kind of worried when I got to I think like the third chapter that Corey had like made his point and he was just gonna keep reiterating it
Yeah.
in different ways. But when I pushed further, I got a lot more out of it. What about you?
I really liked it. Because I already had like an opinion about Black Republicans. I never liked the idea of it. I mean, still like even reading the book, like I got the different I never realized like the different types because I always thought they were all like just basically narcs and just wanted to look up to the man. But
Yeah.
I mean I liked it though. Like it gave me different perspectives, but I still like, will never get the reason. But I never knew, like, I like that the first chapter introduced us and was like, yeah, this is how it happened. Like, I never realized it that when Lincoln, the whole the battle or whatever,
Mhm.
that's when like they started, that's where like the origin story of Black Republicans came about. And it's so stupid that happened, but like, I never knew the origin story, and I never knew the origin story of Black Democrats either from the Great
Uh-huh.
Depression. So, yeah.
Yeah, that part was really interesting to me because I mean that whole process of like the Democrats and Republicans genuinely like completely shifted. Like
Yeah.
before all that, the South, it was Southern Democrats. And that was and it's crazy to think of how quick the shift was where you had the Republican Party that was the abolition party that was pushing for emancipation and whatnot. And in less than like 20 or 30 years. It was a complete flip in support, which I think is pretty impressive from like a political standpoint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think to like double off of that, I found it super interesting that like when that whole real like kind of like realignment was even like happening. I remember like reading in the book, which I guess I never like picked up on, that like when FDR was like proposing like the New Deal stuff, that like he started gaining African American support not from like civil rights legislation, but on the fact that like I think it said something. I'm gonna have to pull it up when we like start talking about it a little bit in depth, but like how like that community voted based off of economics. But actually, let me go find where it said
Yeah.
they voted off of
I
like
know what you're saying.
economic prosperity rather than civil rights, even though they were like prosecuted so heavily, which I was like, that's kind of like really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were having like a bunch of problems with unemployment and poverty at the time, right? And that
I
was
mean, yeah, the depression was like, I mean,
it
in
was
full
But
it
effect.
was hitting them hard.
what's so crazy to me though is, I mean, it's like, I mean, I guess like it's understandable because of the time, but like I still never realized like even during like, cause like when you're growing up or whatever, you're in regular school and they teach you about the Great Depression. They're telling you like, oh yeah, everybody was struggling, you know, but they don't like go into depth and be like, yeah, they were struggling, but they still didn't want anybody black to like work. So like the Great Depression was really, really hard on like black people because everybody was unemployed, and then like nobody was giving them a job, and then on top of that they had nobody to like, what is it, like the presidents, they were all like, we're not really focused on civil rights at the moment, you know, we
Mhm.
got bigger fish to fry, like they just kept saying that. So like I guess when that one group did start, you know, like you know, in the Democrats, like one organization started, I forgot which one it was, but like that's when like black people were like, okay, let me go to the Democrats.
Yeah.
But I never realized that though. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was then like at the national level there really wasn't much push to get black support, black voter support, but it
Yeah.
was more on like in local urban centers where it started to kind of grow out organically. That's where the shift had happened, and that's where you kind of find yourself now. Let's see. Let me pull up. Where's the reading thing at? Okay.
Well, I got a question.
Okay.
So do you guys agree that race doesn't matter when it comes to economic success, or do you feel like ignoring race overlooks important challenges the black community face, and how or why? I can reread it if you want me to.
Um, I don't think it's 100%, well, not 100% relevant. Like I think at this point, your success is really kind of your own. And there's obviously elements that you would have in life that might hinder you based off race. But I think at this point, if you were turned down for a job because of your race, or you were not given an opportunity because of it, um, I think there's plenty of things that you could do to rectify that. It's not like you would just be SOL, throw my hands up. Oh, well, I guess that's just how things are. I don't think that's how things are anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like personally, because like it was that one man in the book. I think his name was Nelson. I guess it was like an older time, but like he basically was like, it was Nelson and somebody else. They said something about let me go to it. They said something about, oh yeah, we can't let a few bad apples spoil the bunch. This is like in the introduction.
Mm.
And I was just like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But at the same time, um, I think, because I know for me, like, I will always blame like the white man for like the struggles that you know, like black people still have to do, because like even like now, like black Republicans, they said in there like we have to work twice as hard for our beliefs. And I feel like, I mean, because it's like, what did you expect when you go into a crowd, and like even when them being in the, what is it, the NRBA, was it, oh,
Yeah,
N,
I
no,
think so.
Yeah.
yeah, no, no, yeah, the NRBA, whatever, the NBRA, when they
The
have,
NBRA.
Yeah, and that in the RBE when they
Mhm.
had the differences or whatever, like it was like a whole big white crowd. Yeah, because like right now, and even like, if nothing changes for a while, it's still gonna always be like, they're not worried about um growing a success for like, colored people. They're always still gonna because Republicans is built on like traditional history and like the traditional ways. So it's always going to be some type of traditionalism involved. So because, we weren't brought into here like, the way that white people were brought into here, it would never be traditional. I feel that it would never be traditional. But yeah, I still feel like when it comes to economics though, it is every man for themselves. Because I feel like personally, like as you keep going, you can't sit here and just blame. That's what like a lot of people like they just stop in the middle of life and be like, I just can't do this. I feel like you gotta do what you gotta do. If you gotta work 3, 4 jobs, and that's what you gotta do. But never, just stop because like that one job that you really wanted, you didn't get it. So yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna say I'm gonna piggyback, I guess, off of what both of you guys said. I definitely do feel like it. I think historically it did have a major like impact on economic like growth and success like of it in like the individual sense. But like I guess as you kind of said, Ben, I guess I really agree with the fact that like I mean now there's like the Equal Opportunity Employment Acts and stuff like that where like if a business turns you down specifically on the basis of race, then like I mean they're gonna get a major lawsuit towards their
Yeah.
entire company. But like at the same time again, I do feel like there could be a bit of an underlying like people can still turn you down for like that job that you really want, but like they could stay for other reasons as
Yeah,
long
so
as
like
it's not.
sue. Yeah.
Yeah, and like so like I do feel like it still plays a little bit of a part, but it's kind of in the shadows more, you can say, where it's like it's very like it's not
It's
surface level like it
underlying.
used to be historically.
Yeah. It's underlying.
Yeah.
I'd found it interesting in the book how, although a lot of the Black Republicans that Corey was interviewing, um, they kept talking about how they didn't let their race guide policy decisions.
Mhm.
And I think like when you talk about these types of issues, I think at this point it's more of a social issue than it is a legislative one because I don't really
Mhm.
know. I'm sure there are things that you could do policy wise and legislative wise, um, but it seems like most of the issues that you see are kind of just a societal issue, and those things take time. Those things take generations to rectify and overturn. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, because I've always thought like if you get rid of like the not get rid of so bad, but like because the older generation, because even like the people that got Alzheimer's, like they still are very racist. Like they probably before Alzheimer's probably weren't that racist, but like when they get Alzheimer's, they're racist. And I know like people that work in the medical field or whatever that tell me that stuff. So it's like even in people, we got people that's in power that are like 80 years old, and they're like, yeah, let's keep the traditional way. So like you got these Black Republicans going in thinking like, oh yeah, like even like people like when they voted for Trump, they were like, oh yeah, like they're gonna accept us. And they were like, yeah, we don't still, we don't still fuck with you. Like, and I feel like that's what this is. Like, that's why they're constantly still having to prove themselves. But it's like it doesn't make sense of why.
Right. Right.
Did my thing cut out?
For at the end there, I think you got it.
Oh, but yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me why. I still don't get it. Like I like the people that he interviewed and people he used that example. I like that it was real people. Like it wasn't like no research based off a website type of thing. You know,
Mhm.
I like that it was like real people and real interactions because it made it make sense better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let me see. I think I had. I had a question too. So Camille, you were talking about the RBE and the what RBE and the RGBA, whatever it was. Basically the like main Black Republican Party that's run by the Republican Party, and then the organic one.
Yeah.
Do you think that if something like the RBE picked up more steam, had more of an organic grassroots community growth, do you think that could usurp some of the Black vote away from the Democratic Party?
I think honestly, when I read that, to be honest, they needed the help from the Democratic Party. Cause if we're being real, like the inorganic and organic, like you can't just start like a whole thing and not have it started from the deep rooted Black community, if that makes sense. That's like having something from like the white people and only having it for the upper class that the lower class white people they can't relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So with you having like, talks about that, you would have to have help from the Democrats. That's what I feel. That's the only way, like, if y'all wanted to make a bill and pass it, like that's the only way it's gonna get passed. Because it has to be for everybody. It's not just for the rich Black people.
So you don't think the Republican Party could really do anything for them? You think they're wasting their time?
Because they're out. I mean, if we're being real, Black people in the when it comes to Black people in the Republican Party, they're what is it called? Undernumbered, whatever the word is.
Underrepresented.
Underrepresented. They're underrepresented because like white people they take a mass majority, and other races they take a mass majority of the Republican Party. So you would have to really get, especially the old GOPs, you would really have to get them to come to a common goal. And yeah,
and that's hard. That would be hard for them anyways, because one of the chapters he talked about just like all the infighting that they have within their group, because they have different ideas about what they think is best for Black people, and then they have you've got the groups that are bankrolled by the Republican Party, which is really just can we get some Black people on stage to say things that make white people feel good about themselves, and then you've got the more organic side that just doesn't gain enough traction. I think the GOP could evolve, Do we think about it as this like old school, old traditional, archaic type group? But I think it can. I think it is evolving. So I would hope that the GOP would read this, because I think if they could rectify this issue and gain more support, that would be huge for them.
Yeah. What about you, Ashley?
Wait, what were we talking about? The of the GOP could get more Black voters or whatever. I think I definitely agree with you, Corey. I think I don't, as much as the GO party would want to, I don't think it could happen. Just because it could evolve. Like there's never never say never, I guess you could say. But I think compared to how it just is overly represented by white Republicans, you would need help from the Democratic Party just to get more attention, I guess. Yeah, that's basically I guess you could say. I think it could definitely evolve, but if we're being realistic, I guess you could say not as much. But like you say, never say never. You never know. But you would definitely need a lot of help from the Democratic Party.
Yeah, especially with the majority right now. Like I said, like they're all older. I'm not saying that they gotta die or nothing, but like
it's just traditional values.
Happen in general. I think there's an old guard in politics in general in both parties that like that's got to go, so that kind of some new blood can come in and they can both get the facelifts that they need.
Yeah, because that's why they hated Kennedy. Like Kennedy, he was young, he was new, and like he wasn't so like, oh yeah, like fuck all these white people. and fuck all these black people. Like
Yeah.
he was for everybody, and he was helpful for everybody. But you know, the white people didn't like that, so you know that's when. But I think I never knew like that's why it was something with the civil rights, but something like a lot of bills that ended up getting passed after he passed away, and I feel like that was kind of crazy, but actually like a good thing at the same time. But it was like, damn,
Mm-hmm.
the hell you
Yeah,
gotta
no, because I think it was Johnson was his, I think, VP, right? I'm not sure about that, LBJ.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Because yeah, LBJ went into like went into Congress and pretty much used Kennedy's legacy of like passing civil rights as like and used his death as like a pedestal of like if you don't vote for this, then you're pretty much spitting on Kennedy's grave. And it
Mhm.
ended up like, I mean, obviously there were some diehard Republicans, especially in the 60s, that like were didn't give, but like it gained a lot more support, which actually like led to the Civil Rights Act of 64 getting passed, which was like massive for the
Mhm.
time. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
it was like early framework to what we see now when that was like kind of huge. But like I think touching a little bit more on the question, I think I agree with what everyone's saying, and I think the part that I wanted to add is just like within the context of the book that like on page 159, kind of going back to the NBRA versus the RBE kind of situation. I think I definitely agree because like even looking within this like context, right? Like the NBRA was like characterized as being majority white with like super like kind of posh, because they're being funded by the GOP, where like the RBE was the breakoff group that was actually more like centralized and focused on the actual issue of um linking conservatism principles to black interests
Mhm.
Mhm.
and being able to kind of like merge those two. But like at the same time, like y'all have said that the um the GOP is so predominantly white that like even like within the NBRA trying to be like what am I looking for? I guess what I'm trying to say is like I think they would need some backing from the Democratic Party because there's such a white presence within the Republican Party that like it would be harder for them to like, you know, integrate or take a long time. But again, like what everyone's been saying, I think it definitely could happen and will happen. That facelift is gonna, I mean, I think it's coming sooner than what we think. I think post 2024 Trump presidency, we're gonna see a lot of interesting changes
Mhm.
Yeah.
with Congress. I would like to think I mean, to be honest, kind of diving into the unknown here, but
Because that's really what like people don't understand. Like that's the one that we need for it to change first before anything. Like it can happen statewide, but like the most effective I feel right now would be Congress.
mhm,
And once that starts like, you know, changing, I'm not saying that they gotta go full Republican or full Democrat, but they need to, you know, they need to modernize themselves. I
mhm.
because they're stuck on like the old American dream of the household with the mom, dad, little girl, little boy in the
Mhm.
house. Like I feel like
Which
that's what they're stuck on. I
which like
think
I like oh sorry, no, you first. You first, you first.
You're good. You can go if you want to go.
Oh no, you go first. My
Okay.
thoughts are really not that important.
Oh well, neither am I. But anyways, kind of piggybacking off like what you and Kamaya were saying, or what y'all were saying earlier about like the having old traditional views, especially about old traditional white Republicans and like the Republican Party and everything. I think it's definitely also important to recognize that a lot of their views are still passed down to younger generations. So I feel like that's something that also takes into account why the Republican Party is so overly represented by white people just because of older traditional views. Um, so I was gonna lead to a question I was gonna ask, but we can still keep talking about what if you were gonna say something. I think.
No, because I was pretty much gonna say like pretty close to what you're saying. That like
Mhm.
the Republican Party we see today is like, I mean, they old and like they were like thriving when
Mhm.
like Jim Crow era was going like
yeah.
in full swing. So like I think that the younger majority of America is super, I feel like, underrepresented in Congress, and it would be the first place that would need to change because I feel like the younger population as a whole thinks a lot more in a progressive stance than like an old traditional stance. And there's still gonna be like, I mean, a big group of people that believe in the like traditional conservative values, but like I think that facelift that Ben was talking about would prove to kind of show a lot more progressive views on both sides of the aisle. But again, that's just kind of like an opinion that I have, rather than, um, to be honest, it's the unknown. I don't know.
What was
What
your
was-
question, Ashley?
Yeah, what was your question?
So it's in regards to chapter 3 when he talks about mainly about like color blindness, and there was a specific part when he was talking about how colorblind African Americans claim all they knew were the Democratic Party, and it wasn't until they found out more about the Republican Party that they had realized they were supporting the other side. So basically, my question is that have you ever felt like you were expected to stick to a particular viewpoint or identity just simply because that's what you were told, like growing up, and how like that can affect your political beliefs or like I guess other aspects of life?
Um, for me personally, I feel like I never had to, because for one, like politics was never spoken in my home, and like that's something like I kind of picked up on my own. But like I mean, knowing now, like I know like my peoples are Democrats. I know that now, but like growing up, like I didn't know anything about that. But um I never, but they always like let me, do my own thing. So if I ever like, in an alternate universe, if I ever did want to be a Republican, like, they would be supportive. Like I know like a lot of other people's families, like they were of a, like during the whole thing, everybody just
Yeah.
like divided. Like, like I never felt like I was pressured to like, be a certain thing growing up at all. So no.
Uh, I wouldn't say it was something I had. My home was similar. Like we didn't really talk about politics, and even if it did get brought up, you would never be able to guess where my parents landed. But it wasn't so much that, but that part of the book was interesting to me because it reminded me of when I had lived in California. I lived in San Diego for 4 years, and that's a huge blue state, like the Democratic stronghold. And I would talk to people all over the place there, and the sense that I got from them was that a lot of them are like left wing, Democratic voters, and I got the sense that a lot of them aren't really voting for it because they so wholeheartedly believe in it. They just vote for it because that's kind of the default out there. And so that's just you expect that. Like you're in California, you expect people to be liberal. Um, and it would you would have this the same effect as like these black Republicans that were interviewed in here had, where like in California you've got Orange County, which is a big Republican county, and the people that would go against that grain would kind of have to like double and triple down because there's a level of social cohesion to it, because if you're not just with the default, then you're going against the grain and you're constantly having to explain yourself or defend yourself. So I kept drawing parallels in my mind between those two things when I was reading that chapter.
Yeah.
I guess I will say that I kind of never doubted. I know like where I grew up, it's been very blue. I mean, I live in a household with two moms, so like I mean, most of my views have always been I've grown up very progressive. And even when I began kind of like studying politics and understanding how partisanship works and like kind of the aspect behind both parties, I never really questioned it or like thought about it, and especially going like when I did start looking into it, like the party that I believe in now lines up with what I have always believed. So it's like I've never really thought about it personally, but I will say actually kind of touching on what you were saying about like I guess the social cohesiveness or I grew up in a very hard red county. So like being blue in the county I was in was always kind of looked at funny, which like kind of I guess sometimes made me be like, huh, well that's weird. I don't know how to deal with that. But like, Yeah, no, I know for me personally, I have not had one of those kind of like aha moments that they talked about in the book. That's just me.
No.
At least for me, I mean, answering my own question, I guess. I grew up with two Mexican immigrant parents whose obviously first language wasn't English. So I mean, they never really knew too much about politics when I guess they got here to the United States and everything. So I never really also had like to be honest on either side, whether it was Republican or Democrat, knowing too much about either party. It wasn't until obviously that I started going to school, just learning more about it in general. But I guess once I started learning more about it, it was never really a question whether it was Republican or Democrat. It was obviously Democrat, I guess, just knowing where the Republican Party can stand on views about immigration. Um, but yeah.
What about you, Chester?
For I myself, I've grown up in a very diverse county with a lot of differing opinions and thoughts. I think mostly left leaning in my household as well. Very left leaning. My dad being African American, but for him at least, it wasn't the, I guess, expectation of being a Democrat or falling on the left because of your race, but because of like an actual grounded set of beliefs and values. And he very much tried to kind of instill that into me growing up. Um, and for my mom, she's Mexican and Guatemalan, and her parents are immigrants, so that also kind of plays a role into where she falls on the political spectrum and her own beliefs. Um, so yeah, I don't think there has ever been like a moment of doubt. I'm very sure of what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
The closest thing to that would probably be that point in time on the internet where it seemed like they were pushing a lot of, I don't know if I want to say alt-right, but I guess just a lot of right wing um I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if any of you can recall that like strange moment around like 2016 to maybe like 2018 where they're pushing a lot of the like Ben Shapiro compilations of like left wingist gets wrecked
Yeah. All the
or
cringe compilations and whatnot.
yeah, the cringe
Yeah.
compilations, watch this transgender person lose their shit, things like that. Because it did get to me, not to like, not that it triggered me, but it portrayed the left in a certain way that I was starting to question kind of where I fell in, in that regard.
Yeah.
But it was never to the point where I was feeling like, yes, I am a Republican. Just
Yeah.
that I don't know, I think similar to a lot of other young men at that time, uh it got you kind of pondering or thinking. Not in any good way though, because it was never anything that thought-provoking or anything that really I don't know, it never really flipped a switch or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just enough, I guess, that is like appealing, that kind of like wow factor, as well as like the humor of that time on like YouTube with like
Mm-hmm.
iDubbbz or Filthy Frank. Um that you find a lot of more conservative people finding to be more appealing or consider like alt-right, things like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, not really.
Yeah, I think that was the point of it anyways. I mean, that's those compilations that it was to kind of portray a boogeyman, so to speak, you know.
Yeah,
Each
yeah,
party has a boogeyman caricature of their opposition, and the closer they can get you to believing that that's the reality, the happier they'll be, because that means that they'll drive you closer to their ranks.
definitely propaganda-esque or
Yeah,
just straight propaganda.
yeah.
So this is a different question, but why do Black Republicans often face pressure to address, or why do you guys think often that Black Republicans face pressure to address issues like crime, drugs, and teen pregnancy in the Black community? while white Republicans are rarely expected to comment on these same issues within the white community.
Well, because they're black. Uh, oh, I mean, that's the big reason is just because they're black. A
Yeah.
white person isn't expected to speak on those things because they are an outsider of the community. They don't have that firsthand experience or look into it. It's also just a touchy subject matter. So again, they're not expected of it. They don't expect themselves to speak on it. Um, because they could be called racist or out of touch. Um, but yeah, they kind of seem like black Republicans, they seem like a way to kind of bridge that gap and be able to speak on those things. Whether or not they really should be the ones to speak on it, at least from my opinion. Because I never really spoke on that. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it's probably something that a lot of white Republicans, even if they thought that, this was a big issue and it needs some time, needs to be talked about, they probably think, well, if I were to be the one to comment on it, then doesn't matter what I'll say, it's not going to be received well.
Mhm.
So I think that's more, it's kind of like, knowing your audience and knowing who's speaking. I think it's that type of thing. They think, all right, well, it's probably better if you have that conversation rather
Mhm.
than me.
Yeah, I'll never, like me personally, like I'll never understand. I mean, of course I understand, like, but it's like I'll never fully grasp like why or where all of it came from in the first place. But like honestly, with Black Republicans, like you wouldn't think to ask them that question. I feel you wouldn't think to ask them that question because I feel like every answer that was presented in the book, I don't feel like it was a straightforward answer. Like you've heard other straightforward answers. All their answers like all just got twisted some type of way. But I feel like they also did get ridiculed because they're Republicans. So like the media turned it a different way. It was like making it seem like they what's the word? Just made their response like it wasn't their problem.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like they said they got bigger fish to fry, like the economy. They just kept saying like the economy and other issues were bigger. So like we don't need to worry about the inside,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in the Black communities.
Well, the thing about the economy though is that like for the division of the two groups, like colorblind or color conscious, like for the color conscious side, they seem to be pretty much like black capitalists, if anyone knows what I'm talking about. Like those that think that through capitalism you'll be able to correct all of the I guess shortcomings or
Oh,
downfalls experienced by the black community.
mm,
Like, just stop not going to work, start a business, start making money. It's like a very much like a hustle mentality, but also the want for, I guess, instead of social programs from the government, instead like things to I guess like invite more Black Americans to start a business or whatever, things like that. But to do things that kind of follow or mimic what other communities are doing that are more successful, such as like the white community. I guess trying to mirror that in order to create Black wealth,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
which would be like the closest thing to a straightforward answer. But I think in terms of like an actual process is not straightforward. Because capitalism is complicated and someone has to suffer in order for others to profit. And in this case, being Black Americans, which I like the color conscious side can acknowledge, I'd imagine.
Shoot.
Yeah, basically the minorities have to suffer for the majority to even have anything.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
which again I think plays into that contradiction that what is his name? The author. I would say
Oh.
the author.
Corey.
Yeah,
Wait, what'd you say?
Corey.
Corey.
Corey Fields.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of what Corey Fields tries to get at throughout the book is the kind of ongoing contradiction of how their beliefs contradicts their identity as Black Americans. Yeah.
Sorry, I gotta go now. It was actually a 10.
Okay. It was nice talking to you.
It was.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You got
Good luck
this.
with your job interview.
Thank you.